Hello, friends. I was asked to review the book Primal Leadership, Realizing the Power of Emotional Intelligence. Here is what the book looks like if you had it on your Audible. It's by the famous Daniel Goleman, Richard Boyatis, and Annie McKee. The key insight here from this book is really built off of Daniel Goleman's research on emotional intelligence, or EQ. This book argues that a leader's skill in attending to the emotional states of the individuals and groups that they are trying to lead is core to that leader's effectiveness. Skill and knowledge, which is like IQ, is very valuable, but those things really don't move people. They don't build teams, they don't foster creativity really, or they really reliably lead people through change. A little bit on the authors. Daniel Goleman is, like I said, he's a little bit famous. I think he is the author of the books Emotional Intelligence and Working with Emotional Intelligence. He is a psychologist who has done reporting on human behavior and behavioral sciences and the brain for the New York Times. He was a visiting faculty member at Harvard University, as well as the co-chairman for the Consortium of Social and Emotional Learning at the Workplace, which is part of the School of Professional and Applied Psychology at Rutgers University. Richard Boyatis is a professor of organizational behavior and the chair of the Department of Organizational Behavior at the Weatherhead School of Management at Case Western Reserve University. He's written a number of books as well, as being The Competent Manager, A Model for Effective Performance, and Transforming Qualitative Information, Thematic Analysis and Code Development, among other books and articles. Professor Boyatis is not just an academic. He is also a practitioner. He's the former president and CEO of the McBaron Company, as well as the chief operating officer for Yankovic, Skelly, and White. So he has some real contextual chops, at least in his space. And Annie McKee serves on the faculty of the University of Pennsylvania's Graduate School of Education, as well as teaching at the Wharton School of Executive Education, which is also at Penn, and is a consultant to organizations of business around the world. So there's a lot of real research, a lot of rigor in this book, as well as if you dig into it and read it, there's a lot of real great case studies and examples that I find really valuable as I think about leadership. So the basis of research in EQ, emotional intelligence, is the insight that the brain has an emotional center called the limbic system. Often it gets located in the back of our brain, at the brainstem, by the amygdala. Our physical body is impacted by it, and it feeds on the situation and people around us. So we can pick up, emotions can be contagious, and we can pick up on those. EQ is really about working with that sort of relationship and conversation between our rational or frontal cortex part of our brain and our emotional part of our brain in the back. And when a leader can do that and can do that well, then that leader is in a stronger position to influence that rational emotional dialogue in others. And that is leadership. So this book is a pretty substantial book. It discusses 18 emotional intelligent competencies, but divides them into 4 groups. And so I really just want to talk about the 4 groups. So the first group is self-awareness, which includes personal emotional awareness, accurate self-appraisal, and self-confidence. The second group is self-management. So really different forms of emotional control, your ability to be transparent, your ability to be adaptable and flexible, and your ability to be conscientious, as well as your drive to achieve the things that are important and valuable to you. The third group is social awareness, which includes empathy and organizational awareness, as well as service orientation. And the fourth group is social management. So inspiration of others, communication influence, of developing and coaching others, your ability to teamwork and work in collaboration, your ability to work with groups through change, as well as conflict management, which for this conflict management course that we are doing right now in seminary, I think this is pretty applicable. And the reality is, you can hear these things, you can grow in these things. These are not static Just like IQ can be sort of practiced and honed, so can emotional intelligence. But nobody's really strong in all four areas. But really, the best leaders are really exceptional or notably strong in one of those four areas, and they have proficiencies in many of the competencies for the other three areas. Also, these authors discuss in this book 6 different leadership styles that each draw on different emotional intelligence competencies. Really, each draw from a different one of those 4 boxes or 4 groups, and each is really ideal for different situations. So they sort of categorize these. The first one is visionary, which is really about providing clarity, letting folks find the best way. Once you sort of identified a vision, help them navigate that way. With a weakness of that, it may or may not motivate the most experienced folks. The longer you've been in sort of the game, the more jaded you can be, I guess. The second is coaching, which is really about connecting people's personal aspirations and goals and dreams and all those good things with the organization's goals and tasks and things like that. Connecting those two, sort of fusing those two. Also building abilities and loyalty. One of the weaknesses of this style, though, is that for folks that really don't understand or aren't maybe all that attuned themselves, this can appear like micromanaging for folks. The third category is affiliative, which is about building relationships, creating harmony and collaboration. The challenge with this, and I think I've been in a couple organizations like this, that relationship and the value of those relationships may end up sort of neglecting the tasks and the goals and the things that need to get done in the organization, which of course can be a problem if things aren't getting executed. The fourth category, the fourth style, I should say, is democratic, which is really about getting buy-in and leveraging other people's abilities, right? And sort of, in some sense, you can imagine a boss sort of saying, not just what does everybody think, but in a sense, sort of going with that group consensus and really build consensus. The challenge with sort of leading by consensus, though, and doing that, is that it may sort of lead to paralysis. It can also lead to too much deliberation. It also it could get you to the point where, you guys could change your mind. A group could change their mind too quickly between meetings. The fifth style is pace setting, which is really about upholding high standards and, again, sort of setting that pace. But the challenge with that is, so again, going back, whatever those high standards are, and sort of being clear about those, and then really enforcing those. The challenge with this is that may cause burnout or fatigue. And last but not least, it's the commanding style, which is really about really offering and being decisive in direction, and really expecting and enforcing compliance. The challenge with this is that you can get pretty low buy-in, and you can seem pretty distant. And this one's probably not great unless you're in a super uber crisis, right? So if you're in an emergency room, commanding's great, but if you're not in such an emergency spot, that may not be the best. Leaders with high emotional intelligence will be more likely, this book argues, to choose the style that is most appropriate for the situation, sort of based on the emotional climate, the people there, and the group, and the context of the organization. Finally, in this book, the authors talk about self-directed growth in emotional intelligence competencies, as well as building a culture of emotional intelligence inside of organizations. And they sort of suggest a 5-step development process. That first being envisioning the ideal self or situation. Next is about being really honest about your actual self or your actual situation. Next, third is about creating a learning agenda to move from the actual to the ideal. Fourth is about intentionally practicing these competencies in real time. So it isn't just about a breakout or reading a book, it's about going and practicing these things in real situations, as uncomfortable as that may or may not be. And that fifth step is really about talks about gaining support from colleagues and coaches, and sort of building a structure around you to support you in these changes that you make, and even in little ways hold you accountable, but give you that encouragement and things like that. What's interesting about these 5 steps is, in some ways, each of them are also practices that practice different emotional intelligence competencies. I thought this was a really excellent and interesting read. This is the kind of thing that's kind of book that I can go back to and listen to again and again and learn something more from. And I've read a lot of a lot of leadership books and made use of many of them. So it was really exciting to find something that I could find useful and valuable, both in ministry and out in the secular world. Part of this change class, I do have a case study exploring some of the reasons why folks have, and different Bible studies groups have been resistant when I have brought the dwelling in the Word practice to them. And I think one insight that I have is that I really think in all those situations, I maybe sprung it on them, and I really was more doing a commanding style. If you look at those, talk about that leadership practice, I was using a commanding style, and really without stressing too much, or really just assuming that folks, because I wear a collar or because I'm the one leading the Bible study, they'll come along and it'll be fine. And I really didn't think about, or even didn't think about whatever discomfort folks may have. Obviously, I felt that otherwise I wouldn't be using this for a case study. That is, I just sort of said, I don't need to stress about that. And I think, honestly, discomfort is probably okay, especially in times of like crisis, right? Where you really need urgent and proximate change, and you have that need. But really, a new sort of Bible study practice is not one of those moments. So I'm thinking about what I could have done, and when I sort of do the analysis around this, what I could have done, I could have used a more coaching style to introduce this dwelling in the Word practice. I'm going to think about that. And what's funny is that I also do executive coaching work. So, it's interesting to not have brought that, right? Not brought more of a teaching or coaching mentality. And what's also, since I really want sort of what I have currently going on with Bible study at my current context, I've gone back and I've done more coaching and encouraging and things like that as part of this work as we've gone through this Lenten Bible study series. And I think not only are they getting used to it, but I think that is also helping. So I recommend this book. Thank you very much for watching. Take care, friends.